Power is violence, its promise, its deed. Power cares nothing for reason, nothing for justice, nothing for compassion. It is, in fact, the singular abnegation of these things. Once the cloak of deceit is stripped away, this one truth is revealed. First in, last out. I know that you guys have been waiting for this review, and I apologize that it hasn't come out sooner. It's been months since I have finished Reaper's Gale, and things have just been busy in my life. There's really just no other excuse besides that. I, moved, had a baby, been reading a lot of other stuff, and I just haven't had the time to properly sit down and really do my kind of more in-depth Reaper's Gale review that I've been wanting to do. But now this week I finally have the time to really sit down and just finish off the Malazan in-depth reviews. So I appreciate you guys for being patient with me. And I hope that I can deliver a review that is worthy of this book, because this Reaper's Gale is an interesting book when it comes to Malazan and the Malazan fandom, at least from what I've seen online, because this one seems a bit more controversial. There are Malazan books that are kind of universally praised. I would say Memory's Vice is universally praised. The Bone Hunters is universally praised. I would say The Crippled God is universally praised. And then there's books that are like generally liked across the board. Dead House Gates is usually generally liked. Midnight Tides is usually very generally liked. Gardens of the Moon is usually very generally liked. But then there's stuff like Reaper's Gale where the fandom is kind of divided, because there are people who really like Reaper's Gale, and not to spoil the rest of this review, but I'm one of them. And then there are people who really dislike Reaper's Gale. One of the YouTubers I really like, and I've followed for a long time, Mike's book reviews, I think he gave up after Reaper's Gale. He just couldn't get into this one. Like, this one was just, it just didn't work for him. And I don't know if he'll ever give Toll the Hounds a chance or read the rest of the series, but there's a lot of people who really like this book, but there's also plenty of people, on the internet who do not like this one. They think the story's slow, it's not as engaging, you're given new characters, blah, blah, blah. So, for a lot of people, Reaper's Gale is not the book that they were looking forward to with the 7th installation. But for me, I think it's genuinely a very good book. And I'm hoping in this review to explain kind of why. So I'll start at the beginning. Now, it's been months since I read this. My memory is shot. And while I wrote notes, they're kind of scattered and all over the place. But what I enjoy about Reaper's Gale, I enjoyed it from the beginning, because right from the start, if I remember correctly, the first section is essentially Stephen Erickson exploring what colonialism and fascism looks like in this fantasy world, and how they go hand in hand with one another. Because if you remember, and I presume if you've seen this video, you do remember, the Tist Edur have taken over Letheras. See if I remember that name correctly. Yeah, I think I did. And they have essentially, become the rulers. But the thing about Letheras is that its culture is so pervasive and so persuasive that it infects everything it touches. The Tist Edur are this kind of old, conservative power in the world. They used to live by certain standards, and they have not deviated from those standards in what seems like thousands of years. And Letheras and the people of Letheras are they're like these greedy, like self-serving, very manipulative, Just like you have to crawl to the top, and if you don't crawl to the top, you're not really worth anything. It is a very self-serving system, and the people who make it are very, I don't know, like egomaniacal, like sociopathics. And then, 99% of society is suffering except for the 1% on top. It's very clearly, at least to me, commentary on capitalism. I think Steven Erickson, he doesn't hold any bars. It seems like the people of Lether or whatever are like, I think he's making a critique on Western capitalism, in my opinion. That's how I read it, and more so even on fascism and colonialism, because again, like if you remember in Midnight Tides, this is a country that has expanded its borders, it's influenced its like section of the world, and it does it through both strong power and soft power. So it has literally taken over places and waged war on the Tist Edor people and their homeland, but it also has influenced the cultures around them by having so much money and military prowess that they don't really actually have to invade. They can just simply have their culture dominate another. And I think the way that Steven Erickson handles this at the beginning, and shows like this culture has infected the Tistador is through the use of this secret police whose name I'm genuinely not going to remember. But the secret police, I think, are like how Erickson has decided to examine this seedy underbelly of society, because like they're essentially, at least from my memory, the secret police are essentially used to get rid of people who like are a problem with society, which that's what secret police do. But I find that there's just something about the way that Erickson writes, especially in the first section, about these social constructs and these social issues that I found convincing. There are not, fantasy. A lot of fantasy authors use real political and social issues as backdrops, and they struggle with them. But what I find interesting about Erickson is that he does it in a way that it doesn't feel like it's pandering, or that he's trying to force you to believe what he's writing. He just throws the argument out there, and I think he's persuasive enough for you to want to agree with him, but he doesn't necessarily force you to agree with him. He's not saying that this is the objective truth. It's him, I think, putting out his genuine opinion, at least what I perceive to be his genuine opinion, and using it to say certain things. Colonialism is bad. Capitalism serves the interests of the rich, and it doesn't really do it for most people. Most people suffer under these systems. Fascism and how it infects culture is very subtle, and it takes years and years for these things to take place. And if you're not used to this kind of culture, it's so easy to like get infected by it and be twisted by it. So I immediately from part one was engaged, because like this book is Malazan is dark series. You know what I mean? Like it's a dark series. It's got a lot of really dark, depressing crap, murder, genocide, colonialism, really just not great things. But this book is dark because it kind of opens up with this like whole essay scene, and just this crazy amount of abuse, and how the secret police are using people and stuff. So it sets the tone like immediately that Reaper's Gale, things have not necessarily gone well for the Tist Edor or anyone in Lether except for those in power. Things are not going great, and it's so interesting to me because it just works. You know what I mean? Like like I know some people think the start of this book is slow because you're introduced again to a whole group of new characters, and it just makes you go like, oh, who cares? Like I don't want to follow this secret police. Like a lot of people think this plot line is incredibly weak, and I won't argue against them. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But I found that the commentary on fascism, colonialism, and capitalism through the use of the secret police and through, Roulade and, the rest of the Edor and kind of what happens with, oh man, Tehol and Bug is really interesting because, like, I don't think a lot of authors handle it as well as Erickson does here. Still, there's a lot more going on in the story besides colonialism, and I think one of the great strengths that this book really has, and something I've enjoyed throughout this series, is these convergence of events. I think the convergence books are the best in the series. Memories of Ice is the first one. Bone Hunters is the second one. Reaper's Gale is the third one. And The Cripple God is the ultimate one. Obviously, you'll see later today, maybe, or at least later this week, that I'm leaving another one out that I really loved. But it's less of a convergence, and it's just more of a great, almost self-contained story. But I love these convergence events because, like, we come out of the Bone Hunters, and a lot of crazy stuff has happened. The Bone Hunters have essentially left the Empire because, Adjunct, I know it's Ganos Perron's sister. Why am I forgetting? I'm just going to say Adjunct Perron has refused the Empress's call to abandon her people, and she's been infected by some things. The empire's not in a great place, just to say that. And the Bone Hunters are on the run. They're essentially a rogue army, and a bunch of other really crazy stuff happen in Bone Hunters. Like the Jade Giants were falling out of the sky, and there were some, Ganos was there, and he had his own plot line, and, it was a crazy time. But this is one of those few books where it immediately picks up where kind of the Bone Hunters left off with their plot line, is because, like, some people I know they don't like the army parts as much. They don't like the banter. They don't like, the camaraderie. They think that those kinds of things don't add anything to the story. But for me, I'm really invested in those things, and I want to see where the Bone Hunters go. So the second they show up on the Lethras shore, and you start to see where things are going to go with them, I'm immediately invested. We saw in the Bone Hunters, and yeah, I'm going to just say the Bone Hunters because I don't think that they were in Midnight Tides, that the Malazan Empire and Lethras were in conflict with one another, or at least the Tist Edor and the Bone Hunters were in conflict with one another. So they knew about each other's existence, but this is the book where they kind of come to a head. And I think the way that Erickson writes these convergence stories, where you have all these plot threads coming together with Troll and the Bone Hunters and Roulade and Kars Orlong's back in this, and it's just like it's amazing how you think that these plot lines are not going to ever connect, and he brings it all together. So one thing. And I want to focus on kind of two characters, because these are the two plot lines that I really remember the best. Is Troll. Troll is the standout character in this book. I think Troll is one of Erickson's best characters that he wrote in this story. I love the fact that he is this determined good man. He is a hero, like just genuinely a very good dude. And he is determined to help out his brother. He's determined to do the right thing by his people. He's determined to save others, and just do right by his fellow mortal men, right? And to say that I was pissed off when he died in this book would be an understatement, dude. I was furious, and I seriously cannot believe he died. I was so upset. I was genuinely so upset because from Midnight Tides, or even House of Chains, he has this beautiful story where he was thrown out by his people, he was abandoned by his brothers, and he should be dead by every stretch of the imagination. He should want to give up on life, and yet he persists in doing the right thing. He meets some other great characters throughout the story. He defends people he doesn't really know. He goes head to head with groups of people that you would never think he's going to go head to head with, and ultimately he just continues to try and do the right thing by everyone, and he's trying to help his brother out at the end of this story, and he gets murked for it. He gets killed, and it makes me so genuinely upset. And that is something that I really need to take the time to compliment Erickson on. I did not cry at all in this series. I didn't. And I thought I would. But despite not crying, this dude was able to pull out such a serious emotional reaction out of me. It was so intense. When Troll died in this book, dude, I literally felt my heart drop into my stomach. And that is something Erickson just does so well. He gives you these moments with these characters, and people don't call him a character writer. Oh, Erickson, he's not a character writer. He's not focused on the characters. And yet, that doesn't matter, because he is so effective when he does focus on these characters that when you lose them or when they get defeated, you really care, at least in my opinion. So yeah, I think the people who are like, oh, he's not a great character, wrong. Troll is a great character, and I think he proves that. I think he proves that. I think Erickson is very good. I know he's not focused on characters like a lot of other fantasy series and fantasy authors do, but man, I was rooting for him. I was really rooting for him. And I kind of even felt it coming. I felt like that this was a character who would not make it to the end of the series. And still, when it happened, I was deeply upset. Also, can I just take a second to say, Karsa Orlong, just, seriously, one of the best characters in this series, maybe the best. He was incredible throughout this book. There's something, I just love Karsa Orlong, man. I love a character that is just so self-confident and just believes in themselves and just proves it every time. Like he's not just an egomaniac. He just genuinely can do these things. And when Karsa, goes to fight Rulad and actually beats him, what are we talking about, man? What are we talking about? Because only Karsa could have done this. I love Karsa in this book. And it was just so great to see him take down Rulad. Because Rulad, oh man, Rulad, dude, what a beautiful but tragic tale. This is a character that you can't help but feel bad for, because from the beginning, from Midnight Tides, you can see that he so deeply wants approval from the people around him. And then he dies, and then he's offered a chance back, and it drives him crazy. The crippled god gives him this sword and drives him nuts. And you can't help but feel bad for the guy, because he makes all the wrong decisions throughout this series, throughout these books. He he goes crazy. He becomes a dictator. He becomes a tyrant. He takes his brother's wife. He assaults her. He drives her to kill herself. He drives his brothers away. He, is on a crazy murder spree by bringing in these soldiers that are supposed to kill him. And, you see him make bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, and yet you can't help but just feel bad for him. And I wish we kind of saw more of him in this book. But like at the end of the day, his end is exactly what he needed, and I think what we needed as readers. Just seeing him rise and fall, and kind of seeing that ripple effect across the Tist Edor was just an amazing story. I felt like Erickson just nailed it out of the park in those aspects, and I just really enjoyed it. So obviously, you guys can kind of tell I really like this book, but I do want to just quickly touch on a few aspects that I wasn't necessarily vibing with. I really liked the colonialism. I really liked the commentary. I liked Roulette. I liked Troll. I liked all the character moments. I felt like, I don't think that there were any characters who weren't good in this story, but I think some of the plot lines in this book didn't necessarily go in the direction they did, or people overhyped them. So I'll start with my most controversial one, and then we'll work back down from the controversy level. And I'll start with Beak. Beak is this character who I've been told is just, if you don't have an emotional reaction to anything else, you'll have an emotional reaction to Beak. And I didn't think he was that great. I'm gonna be honest, guys. I went, maybe it was the expectations thing, but when you're told time and time again, oh, this character and his storyline is going to get you to have an emotional reaction, and it doesn't happen, it feels out of place. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that his storyline with the Malazans and what he does and with the candles isn't brilliant on a thematic level. It is. Can't ever tell, I can't ever tell you guys that Erickson doesn't absolutely nail it when it comes to themes. But what I can tell you is that, like, the emotional level and what happens with him sacrificing himself and burning up all his candles at once to make sure the Edor who are left and the Malazans who are left survive, I just didn't think it was that great. Because Beak is like this, I would call him mentally challenged. He's this mentally held back individual who has like the mind of like a 10-year-old, honestly. And there is some obvious trauma in his life. I think he was assaulted. His brother ended up killing himself. He has this incredibly tragic storyline and background. And, maybe I'm heartless, but I felt like it was so artificial. I felt like it was so not like a realistic depiction of these things. And Erickson, throughout these books, I have always felt like he has displayed these ideas of trauma and horrors that are inflicted upon us in brilliant ways. And for me, I felt like Blake was just a disservice to what could have been achieved with his story. And I don't have a ton of complaints, but that is one of them. And I wanted to like it, but I felt like Beak's sacrifice just wasn't that great. I'll also talk about the Red Mask storyline really quickly. What was the point? What was the point of that, dude? We waste, I don't know how many pages the Red Mask storyline really is, but it feels like dozens, if not hundreds of pages following this man. And, this is a spoiler review, obviously. You guys have watched this much. But, like, what a waste of time. What a genuine waste of time. And I get some people are going to comment and they're going to be like, but it's about the thematic, war is this death, revenge is not this thing that you should follow. War is, disastrous, and it can only ever lead to one conclusion, which is ultimate death. Who cares, dude? You're telling me that you give this character this amazing story where he brings his people out of the mud. These people have been persecuted over the past decades or centuries, who knows? And he's this brilliant tactician and leader, and it's all for nothing. It's all for nothing. His entire clan, his entire race of people killed for no reason. I hate it. The conclusion is so infuriating compared to everything that came before it. I despise it. I think that this storyline did not need to even be in this book, genuinely. Especially with what happens in the later books and how they kind of play out. And again, I'm going to save that stuff for those reviews. But where this story, like, some people are like, oh, you have to read the rest of the books to see what the significance of a storyline. You don't. There is no significance. It's completely used for thematic purposes. And for some people, that's enough. But for me, it's not. I like things to mean things. Maybe that's a personal failing of my part, that I can't just let things lie, or things can't just conclude for thematic purposes. I didn't like it. I did not like it. And also, just finally, before I wrap up, two more things. Number one is the Silchest Ruin Kettle storyline. Who cared? This entire Scabandari Blood Eye storyline that happens, who cares? Genuinely, who cares at all? What a waste of time. It was so incredibly boring, and it led absolutely nowhere. I like Silchest Ruin. I like the characters we follow. I do. But the storyline itself did not need to exist in this book. This is a 1,200-page book, and I think if you cut the Red Mask storyline and the Silchest Ruin storyline, or at least summarize them, you would have a much better book. I can see why people don't like this book if they focus on those things, because who cares? Who cares about these things, man? And, there's thematic reasons, and, there are certain story seeds that are planted, but ultimately it feels like it leads nowhere, at least nowhere significant. And it just how the Sengar brothers storylines end, and everything, and how these threads are cut off, or how they end. It ultimately doesn't matter. It ultimately does not matter. The Silchest Ruin storyline ultimately, to me, does not matter. The Red Mask storyline, to me, ultimately does not matter. And I don't know. Those were some negative aspects that I just did not care about, genuinely. And final thing, before I can kind of do my conclusion, is the Errant. I hate him. I hate the Errant. I absolutely despise that dude. Worst god in the Malazan universe, period. I don't care. I know other people will disagree. Don't care. I hate the Errant, dude. The fact that I'm coming back to this. The fact that he is partially responsible for killing Troll and all the things that happen in this book, I'm glad what happens to him in the later part of the series. I ecstatic about the fact that his end comes the way it does. But yeah, I hate him, dude. And again, I know I had some negatives, but ultimately, if you can get me to have that kind of emotional reaction to a character, a villain, or a good guy, I think you did pretty well overall. Reaper's Gale is a pretty good book overall. And I'm sure I'm missing huge plot points and characters and storylines, but it was months ago, so I apologize for that. But it's still a really good book. I think I gave it a 9 out of 10. And if you just cut that Red Mask and Silchast Ruin storyline, it would have been higher. But those things really killed the pacing in this book. I mean, like this is a pretty well paced book for being like 1,200 pages, and I thought it was great. I like it more than Midnight Tides, which is probably a controversial opinion. I like it more than quite a few books in this series now that I think about it. But yeah, those few things really held it back. But overall, it's a great story. I think it has some of the best character moments throughout the series, especially with Troll, Karsa, and Roulette, dude. Those three carried this story. I love the Bone Hunter storyline in this. And I know I didn't talk about it a whole lot, but just how they invade Lether and just take it over. I love the Bone Hunters. I genuinely did not think I'd like them as much as I ended up liking them in this series. House of Chains, if you've seen that review of mine, was not a fan. Was not a fan. But now, completely in love with them. So yeah, good book overall, but it has a few glaring flaws, and I don't fault anyone for reading this book and being like, this one kind of stank. I don't know, but it seems like the controversial books for the most part are the ones I enjoy the most. So there's something wrong with me, obviously. But that's my review for right now. 9 out of 10. Reaper's Gale's a good time, genuinely, and I think it has a lot of great things going for it. Hopefully that wasn't too chaotic of a review.